Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Andrea, are we good?
We are great.
Okay, wonderful. So, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome. Before I introduce our Chancellor of USCB, let me just say two things real quick. Riding on the coattails of our extremely high success of our global conference at the USCB Hilton Head campus last Friday, the United States Department of Education has just informed us that from all the grant-funded projects this year, they have selected one project that the United States Department of Education will feature at their single presentation at the NAFSA Expo and Convention in San Diego, May 2025. The attendance for that expo is about 9,500 people, and that one university is USCB. Now, that would not have been possible if not for the vision of our speakers today. So really, the applause needs to go for all of our speakers who had the vision for our USCB. So if we could please give the applause for Dr. Upshaw and everyone speaking today. Now, we thank them all, and ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the Chancellor of USCB, Dr. Al Pinu.
Thank you, Abad. Good afternoon. Okay, I know. Let's repeat that. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Fantastic. That is very good. Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion today. It is wonderful to see friends, colleagues, and the community come together to celebrate the 20th anniversary of USCB becoming a baccalaureate degree granting institution. Happy birthday, USCB, 20 years. More than 20 years ago, in this auditorium, a community forum helped galvanize public support for a new four-year university. It is fitting that we are here today to reflect on that historic achievement as we continue to build on our vision for the future. A great many people worked extremely hard to bring about USCB's transformation from a two-year institution to a university accredited to grant baccalaureate degrees. Some of those individuals are with us today. Some, unfortunately, are no longer with us, but we are forever in their debt for their hard work and dedication. These extraordinary advocates believed in the mission and vision of a comprehensive university in a low country. They saw its exciting potential. They understood its tremendous impact on the economic and cultural growth of the region. This panel includes some of these transformative and visionary leaders. Not only did they dare to dream, but they also put their shoulders to the grindstone and did what needed to be done. Today, they will take us on that journey. Establishing USCB as a four-year university was a monumental task, to say the least, that required great creativity and strategic thinking. They knew that to grow and prosper, the Lowcountry needed to attract new businesses, industries, and residents. A cornerstone of this plan for prosperity was and still is higher education. So for this reason, a community-centric academic vision continues to guide USCB to this very day. From our three distinct campuses in Bluffton and Beaufort and on Hilton Head Island, we support innovative centers and programs that benefit local communities and the regional economy. Our faculty's expertise and intellectual capital are consistently utilized by civic and business leaders to help tackle the region's challenges. And of vital importance, we are meeting the educational need of the region's families. More than 40% of our students are from Beaufort and Jasper County. In 20 years, USCB's enrollment has grown tremendously, attracting students from well beyond the Lowcountry. In addition to location, students are drawn to our growing range of undergraduate majors and minors and 2 master's degrees and our emphasis on experiential learning. In fact, enrollment has grown almost, and this is the total enrollment, almost 75% since fall 2004 to a record of 2204 today. And degree-seeking student enrollment has also grown by over 140% over the same period. More than 5,000 USCB alum now work in a myriad of professions here in the Lowcountry, across the state, and around the world. We are proud of how USCB's vibrant campus life has expanded over the past 20 years and now includes 13 NCAA Division II athletic teams, numerous student organizations and clubs, and many special events and programs that are open to the public. USCB has come a long way in 20 years. We are truly more than you imagine. None of USCB's success would be possible without the vision and leadership of our moderator today, USCB's founding chancellor and distinguished Chancellor Emerita, Dr. Jane T. Upshaw. In the years leading up to 2004, she tirelessly steered the efforts to establish USCB as a comprehensive university. When that daunting task was accomplished, she led the new institutions for 11 years, laying the foundation and the groundwork for those of us who would follow in her footsteps, including myself. But ladies and gentlemen, before I hand the microphone over to the remarkable Jane Upshaw, let's watch this short film.
The baccalaureate degree it's just the American dream, you know.
It was hard for me to afford to go away to school. And I thought about the young people and others who would attend college that wanted this opportunity, and to have it here in your back door, in your neighborhood, in your county, was huge.
Part of our problem at the time was the isolation, the relative provincialism of the Beaufort area.
And we were way down here in the Lowcountry, so leaders here were interested in having access to higher education.
And it was always our ambition to become a baccalaureate degree graduate institution.
There are many lives who could not have, would not have
baccalaureate degree were it not for USCB.
The effect that USCB has had on this area has been tremendous.
The 20th anniversary of USCB as a four-year baccalaureate degree granting institution is a real step for our community. It follows a lot of civic leadership that preceded that 20 years.
You cannot imagine how hard it was to do what we did.
And all this land was Union Camp land. Well, Anton, here's an idea for you. Why don't you take a couple hundred acres of that Union Camp property on that proposed highway and give it to the university to build a new campus on it? And all of a sudden, his face went serious. He said, he'd lean on his desk. He said, you know, that's the kind of idea that our board of trustees would be interested in.
When Sun City was announced, Sun City was really interested in their residents having access to lifelong learning.
One of the first things that I think helped really in the transition was a bill passed in the legislature which established the Beaufort Jasper Higher Education Commission. This was encouraged and pushed by Senator James Waddell.
The other one that was really instrumental in this change was Jimmy Waddell. He was a local senator, and he pushed the thing through.
I knew if I could get Hargrave to support this thing, a lot of other people would fall in line. So I started making as many comments at board meetings, when we'd have board meetings, about the university.
And Brantley and Helen Harvey had a significant donation. And then the Hargrave donation obviously was significant. It just, everything aligned.
Beaufort County had a wonderfully creative county administrator named John Catmar. And that vehicle, it was a tax increment finance district.
We had our annual county council retreat over at Riverbend, and I can remember leaving the retreat, and I had 6 messages from Chancellor Upshaw. She was very interested in and wanted to know, had we passed that, had we voted and identified the creation of a TIF district for the $40 million investment for the 2 facilities at that retreat. And of course we did.
So we gathered a group of folks together at the USCB Center for the Fine Arts, and we had people on the stage that were with the elected leadership as well as the leadership of the hospitals and the schools and the military bases. And every single person said, we really need this for the benefit of the community, for the benefit of our military families and members that are being recruited here for our medical professions. And the 350 to 400 people in the audience were all, let's do this, let's make this happen soon.
I started introducing the idea at board meetings. So we had a little group of us that were actually working. Some, some would go to one person and work on him, and I would go to another person to work on him, and we'd go to another. So
those people who were contributing to the academic growth and development of USCB were every bit as important as the people who ultimately committed to the physical building.
A lot of late night hours still trying to do all this documentation that the Commission on Higher Education needed. There was nothing digital at that time. So we were completing forms, reviewing the credentials of all our faculty just to make sure everyone has all the required graduate classes.
Once that mission was approved, they sent it to the Commission on Higher Education. So the way the CHE addressed the approval is they put together 2 public hearings. One public hearing was held in Beaufort, and the second public hearing was in Columbia.
The commission approved it ultimately.
I'd just like to say kudos to Jane Upshaw. without her at that time, we were like the engine who could, but she was a conductor who said, hey, we're going to do it, and we got it done. She was at the helm, and she made it happen.
Don't give me the credit for what you see around here. Give me the credit for leading the team. It was the team that did the work.
It very much was a community of people that got behind this. And even then, the community of the Beaufort County, Bluffton, Hilton Head, Beaufort, Jasper County, Hardyville.
And it's now truth. Our vision has become truth.
And I'm proud of what USCB has done in this area.
We build futures here in our institution.
Campus and facility really are a crown jewel of the Low Country.
I had many students that were entering the college come up to me and thank me for what we had done. But it made me feel so good.
I have great memories of going over there and, feeling a part of something.
So I look at what's been achieved in the last 20 years, and I'm amazed and humbled and grateful to USCB for what it's contributing.
One of the things that I'm so proud of is seeing how well our students are succeeding. Our students are competing and distinguishing themselves. You are the reason why we do what we do, and you are the reason why we're able to do it in a way that meets your expectations, in a way that makes us all proud of what we're able to achieve.
Thank you, Dr. Panu. It's wonderful to be here today, but I have to tell you, it wouldn't be a USCB meeting with me presenting without doing a PowerPoint. So you'll have to suffer through watching a few slides as we talk about how it all began and what part everyone played, and how important all of the aspects that came together in this incredible opportunity that was really such a fortuitous happening. When I think about it, we couldn't have scripted it better, and yet it all came together. So it all begins with Beaufort College. And when you go back and read the history, much of it written by Larry Rowland and Walter Edgar and other historians, you learn that even in 1795, when it was chartered and opened in 1802, they had a vision. They eventually wanted to be a standalone baccalaureate institution. Now, you have to crawl before you walk and walk before you run, and they started as a 2-year feeder institution to send people to Yale and Harvard, and for a while it worked. And then we had this little upset that happened called the War Between the States. And it kind of all fell apart. And the Beaufort College building, which had opened in 1852, became a part of the public school system. But what was critical was that education continued to be what was delivered in that building. In 1959, when the University of South Carolina had a bigger vision for the whole state, They looked at where higher education was the most difficult for people to attain, and it was in Beaufort and in Lancaster. And so the two furthest places from Columbia got the first regional campuses. And in 1959, the Beaufort County School District gave the facility back to us, and we were again delivering higher education. Beaufort, USCB, when you look at the SACS reports that were written for all those years, and I have read them, it still had this incredible vision to eventually become baccalaureate. It was a matter of the outside forces being ready and having the support, having the population, and having the funding. So the population of Beaufort County, as you can see from the 1950s all the way up to 2000, look at what happens to the red line, which is Beaufort County, and all of a sudden in the 80s and the 90s, our growth grew incredibly. What that opened the door for was for people here to realize the state of South Carolina is making a lot of money from the taxes that are collected in Beaufort County. Dick Stewart had this idea, and we looked at the taxes that were being sent to Columbia and what the return on investment of those taxes were back to higher education. Here we are at 1.31% of the taxes we sent to Columbia that were being invested in USCB. And look at what's happening in Aiken County, in Florence County, and in Greenville County. The truth be known, people in Columbia didn't care about us having higher education because we were funding their institutions with our taxes. And that needed to change. If there ever was a slide that beat people over the head, this one was it. We used this as a focus of every presentation we made. I can't take credit for this. Dr. Plyler, who was the dean before me, came up with this, and he started beating people over the head. He wasn't as loud, and maybe not as tenacious as I was, because when we took this slide with us to Columbia for the last CHE presentation, we were asked by the commission to give them that map because they didn't want to see it anymore. But it tells the story of higher education in the Low Country. Here we sit 2 or 2.5 hours away from where our citizens can go and earn a baccalaureate degree with no access for public or private higher education. It was a wonderful picture of what the story was, so wonderful that when we started on this journey of really making having baccalaureate status a part of USCB, Dick Stewart had little lapel buttons made, and it showed the map of South Carolina and had little dots where all those higher education institutions and it had that big empty space down there. And you know what? We wore them everywhere. And when someone would come to visit, we would give them one, including Dr. Combs and the chair of the Board of Trustees. So, another issue that USCB did that was really important to our progress is that we had cooperative degree programs. Our students needed access to baccalaureate education, and we had a baccalaureate degree that we got through USC Columbia called Interdisciplinary Studies. It was a way that a student could be here, come up with academic goals, identify upper-level courses that help them achieve that goals, take those courses. It had to be approved by a committee locally. It had to be approved by a committee in Columbia, but they would earn a baccalaureate degree. USC Aiken, who was our great partner in this, delivered a business management degree here, an early childhood education degree here, and a BS in nursing here. Now, the nursing degree was very controlled because they had to be graduates of an ADN degree to go into that program. So not every student that came to USCB was qualified for that. And the last one was that we had a collaboration with USC Columbia to have a hospitality management degree. And look at what happened to our graduation rates from 1996, where we only had probably 21 or 22 baccalaureate degrees, all the way through. You see, once we had those cooperative degrees, the students earned them. And we were awarding more baccalaureate degrees at our commencement than we were associate degrees. In fact, Lila and I remember when Lila would have to twist students' arms. They'd be qualified to earn an ADN degree, an Associate of Arts or Associate of Science degree, and she'd have to twist their arm to walk across that stage and get it. They didn't care about those associate degrees. They were coming to us for a baccalaureate degree. And look at what happened in terms of our enrollment. In the fall of 2001, we had the highest growth in the USC system. So you see, those external forces really were coming together. The population to support it. The businesses such as Hargray and 303 Associates and Palmetto Electric and Palmetto Electric Trust to say, we need our employees to have this access, and we're willing to invest to make that happen. But we also had students who wanted to earn those degrees. And a real key to this was that USCB had hired quality faculty that were credentialed to award to be baccalaureate faculty. And they were ready at the go to be a part of a baccalaureate degree granting institution. So there were some milestone events, and I've given up the slides I have on the table. These are some events that were really important to our growth. In June of 2000, we had this incredible event. Thank you, Dick Stewart and 303 Associates, right here. You heard Dick talk about it in the video. But what was really important strategically is that 303 Associates had invited every political body in our region to have a time, their little 45 minutes of talking about this, and for them to be questioned about their support for baccalaureate degrees. So we had Beaufort County Council, Jasper County Council, the town of Hilton Head, the town of Beaufort, the town of Ridgeland, local, everybody that would touch this vision on this stage. And we asked them the question. I didn't have to, thank goodness. But we asked them the question, what do you envision that is the need for the low country of South Carolina in higher education? And to a person, they all said, we need access to baccalaureate education. Furthermore, we talked about the different models, and to a person, they all said, we want ours. We want ours. We want it to be our institution. In September of 2000, we, USCB, formed a citizens task force. It was co-chaired by Dick Stewart and Wes Jones. Wes had been our moderator for the event in June of 2000. And they began to be really critical in carrying this message beyond the low country. In the summer of 2001, Beaufort County formed they passed a resolution and hired a firm to do a tax increment finance study. And in December of 2001, on the day the Board of Trustees voted to support in concept USCB becoming baccalaureate, the Beaufort County Council passed the TIF district. And the TIF district was how this was going to be financed in terms of facilities. In February of 2002, we, USCB, had written the mission statement and we carried it to the Board of Trustees and they approved it. The two hearings that you heard me talk about in the video happened after that. One of them was here and one of them was in Columbia. The one in Columbia was in the CHE meeting room, and it was probably the size of a big classroom. It certainly wasn't in a facility like this. The Lifelong Learning Initiative at USCB had rented 2 buses and filled them and carried them to Columbia. It was standing room only at the CHE. And the CHE on January the 6th, Dr. Pong's birthday, voted to approve USCB being baccalaureate. September, they approved our business management program. And on the 15th of February in 2003, we sent our SACS approval for the substantive change, for the change in role and mission. And on March the 6th, 2003, we had 5 more degree programs. So here we are with 6 degree programs. We're waiting on SACS to approve our substantive change. The mission that we had was for USCB to offer baccalaureate degrees that respond to regional needs, draw upon regional strengths, and prepare graduates to contribute locally and around the world. The degree programs we had were business management, early childhood, English, because we had the faculty to do an English degree, hospitality management, human services, and liberal studies. Liberal studies was the extension of the interdisciplinary studies. There were other degree programs that were under consideration, and that faculty that we had that were incredibly qualified worked so hard under Lila's leadership to put together these degree proposals that would ultimately be approved. I cannot tell you how critical that leadership was, because what they did was reflect the strengths of the Low Country and make these degree programs something that this region could embrace. And so here we were. We were working on the Bluffton campus. That land had been given because, as Blair Rowland said, Sun City wanted that access to lifelong learning. And Union Camp gave USCB 40 acres, free and clear, and the right to buy additional acreage so we would have a full campus right next to Sun City. This is the rendering of the Hargrave building. By that time, we had received the gift from Hargrave that would name that building, and that gift really catapulted us for everything else that happened. It was so important to have that credibility by a company that had long-standing roots in the Low Country like Hargrave. This shows the master plan for the first building. Hargrave is the one on the front. Science and Technology is the next one, and the library is the last one, and that little red facility over there is the maintenance facility. That's what the master plan looked like. And folks, you cannot imagine what it does for an institution that had the vision to only have one building on that campus, to go from having that vision to having this master plan. This sign had been on 278 since 1996. And when we began building, Ed Bass, who was Associate Chancellor for Planning and Construction, put up there, open fall 2004. And oh my goodness, what a glorious day that was. So, in 2005, after we opened, our enrollment exploded. We went from, over the next 10 years, we had a 98% growth in full-time equivalent students. We doubled our full-time equivalent students. And we had a 51% growth in income. Now that's exactly the kind of growth you want at a higher education institution. You want those students to come and earn those baccalaureate degrees and graduate and go out and be productive citizens. And because we had a private developer that was going to build housing, we had to get in the housing business. We didn't want to have a private developer build housing over there where we had the acreage to have it ourselves. So we got pushed into the housing business quicker than we would have liked, but what a blessing it was. We had 95 residents in 2007. We had opened in 2006. I think we had 64 residents then. And look at where it was when I left. And now I think, Dr. Panu, it's over 1,000 students living on campus at the Bluffton campus. And how many up here? 180 residential students up here. So being the whole experience of higher education needs to be residential, because much of what happens to the student happens outside the classroom, not just in the classroom. Now, we want the classroom to inform that, but nonetheless, it is so critical for that learning to be holistic and that experience to include both. And when I left in 2015, you look at the degree programs USCB had. We never dreamed that this would be possible. And yet, with the dreams of all of us put together, this is what happened. And this was the master plan, the area view, when I left in 2015. I'm sorry I don't have one now, because I can assure you it's even way more impressive now, because that student housing goes all the way back there behind the student activities gymnasium, and it is so impressive. And what have we been able to do as a region to experience from this baccalaureate institution? We've enjoyed the wonderful research that has come from highly qualified faculty that could be anywhere teaching, and yet they want to be here. And we've enjoyed the leadership of graduates who've gone into the school system like Leon Lee and now has a doctorate degree and is incredibly successful. Or Allison Gill, who was a graduate in the nursing program and had an internship at Mayo Clinic and is now a hugely contributing part of the health professions in the Low Country. Or Jocelyn Campos, who still works at Marriott and has been a wonderfully contributing hospitality management professional. Or Luke Kirknane, who was the president of the USCB student body and is still the editor of Golf Digest. That's a USCB graduate. And all of us get to enjoy that incredible success that has come from the shared vision, that has come from the shared commitment and the incredible work that went into making this happen. We thank you all for being a part of it. We couldn't have done it without you. But we also thank the faculty, the staff, the leadership, and the students of USCB that continue that vision even today. Thank you.
We are going to fast forward to the present because our next speaker is a current student right now, and that is Victoria Riddle. Victoria is the president of the Honor Student Association. So if we could please welcome Victoria. She's a very, very active student right now, which is why she's speaking first, because students are very busy.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my insights today. As an honor student and president of the Honor Student Association here at USCB, my experiences have profoundly shaped my understanding of the value of baccalaureate and higher education. I chose USCB for its commitment to academic excellence, growing community ties, and the opportunity to engage with dedicated faculty. The historic Beaufort campus, with its rich cultural backdrop and supportive environment, was instrumental in my personal and academic growth through my first year at USCB. USCB has taught me so much about who I am as a person and as a student. I have had the privilege of participating in various academic extracurricular organizations on campus, such as Student Life, SSAB, Best Buddies, and Phi Mu Fraternity. These are just a few examples of the organizations that have fostered community, acceptance, and collaboration amongst peers. These experiences not only deepened my understanding of what it means to be a sand shark, but also allowed me to build lasting connections with those around me. Looking ahead, I believe that my degree from USCB will equip me with the skills and knowledge necessary to navigate the complexities of the hospitality industry. The emphasis on experiential learning and community engagement has prepared me to contribute meaningfully to my community. As I continue on my role as president, I am excited to highlight the importance of our shared experiences at USCB. I hope my perspective encourages others to consider the unique opportunities available here and to reflect on how their own educational journeys can shape their futures. Fins up. Thank you.
So Victoria, just to mention to our honor students who are here in the room today, as a freshman, we have had so many USCB students receive a scholarship from the Savannah Leadership in Tourism organization, but Victoria Riddle was our first freshman to ever receive that scholarship, her first year here in the honors program. So we're really proud of Victoria. Now, our next person to speak started with a forum here more than 20 years ago. So I'd like to welcome Dick Stewart to talk to us.
Thank you. Yes. Earlier, Dr. Upshaw was very gracious in providing credit to me for something that happened. In fact, Courtney Worrell did that good work before I retired, and she became CEO of 303 Associates. Courtney, I think you're in the room. But the good news is she did that good work, and as you can see, since I've retired, she's no longer helping with me with my visual presentations, so you'll just have to bear with me. And before Lila starts making fun of me, there is a spelling error on one of these pages, and so I'm not going to tell you which one of those it is. But I'm confident that Lila will give me a failing grade when the time comes. The reason I put this up here is because we're here to talk about the vision for USCB and how we've achieved that. I think there's much to celebrate. Dr. Upshaw certainly talked about that. Others are going to be talking about that in a minute. But I want to talk about that vision as we look at it today and put some of it into perspective. If you look at this timeline, it's important to me because when I was graduating from college, before many of the people that are here were born, and certainly before any of the students here were born, I was told that I should consider a career in recreation because the productivity of the U.S. worker was so wonderful that we'd soon be working 20-hour weeks, and therefore growth would be in the recreation field. I don't doubt the sincerity of that person, but let's look at some things we're talking to students about today. There are people in the world who think going to a four-year university is job training. It's training for life. I put these dates up here and I want to run through them quickly. The internet only came to exist in 1993 and it's affected millions of lives, everybody here, around the world. The smartphone, which part of my career was attached to, happened in 1994. There's 16 million direct jobs, 12 million indirect jobs. That's 28 million jobs created by that device and the services it provides. Amazon was founded in 1994. That's 1.5 million jobs. Google was founded in 1998 when I first retired, and I'm now in my fourth retirement. And that's 181,000 jobs. And Facebook was founded in 2004, the same year that USCB is celebrating today. And that's 70,000 jobs, all in that 29 million, nearly 30 million jobs. That's 18% of all the jobs in the United States. People that graduated from college in 2004 were not being told that's where the future is. They were being told what people thought based on what the future had been last year. But what we do know is the ability to learn, the ability to work in groups, the ability to think critically, the ability to learn from experiences is how you drive the economy, the society, the individual, and the family, and the community forward. And there's no better place to stimulate those skills, those experiences, than in a university where a student is valued, a student is heard, a student is challenged, and they get the sort of experiences that can't be had anywhere else. Those are the reasons that most people, when asked, would prefer that their child have a great four-year education with a liberal arts bent, but also with some research and experience attached. So in the middle of all that, 2004 becomes USCB becomes a four-year school. Then in 2008, the great economic recession happened. Many of you might not remember it, but some of us do. And it was not what I would consider a great funding opportunity for most households, most businesses, and certainly not for most universities. But this one has done well and thrived, and thank you for the leadership of the institution and the communities for that. Then you look at 2020. That says 29 a lot of it, it's 2020. That's when COVID came, and most of us had not anticipated a global-wide pandemic. But we as a nation responded. We had vaccines. You can have your opinions about those, but we are in a better shape today than we would have been without educated people helping us address that need. Meanwhile, USCB is continuing to grow out of that start into what it is today. Then let's look at 2015. That's when the Paris Climate Accord was opened up for signature. Today, 175 countries have signed that. Now here we are in 2024, soon 2025, to begin the second 20-year term. And I just want to mention to you, as you're thinking about the merits of what you're doing here, what they thought about this in the past. And this quote from H.G. Wells may not be visible at the bottom of the page, so I'll just read it. And what he said is, civilization is in a race between education and catastrophe. He didn't know that there were so many people on the internet describing the catastrophe around the corner to us like we have today. But a race between education and catastrophe to let us learn the truth and spread it as far and wide as our circumstances allow. For the truth is the greatest weapon that we have. And the truth is not learned by listening. The truth is learned by engaging. And that's what this four-year university has done for this community. Could I have the next page, please? Thank you. You will see at the top of this page the term Carolina Bite. Now, Dr. Upshaw and a lot of other folks have routinely and recently said the Low Country. I'm a fan of the Low Country, and for some reason those people in Charleston think they have a claim on that word too and think they're in the Low Country. We won't criticize their narrow-sighted vision of that, but let's claim our rightful place in this world. I am here to tell you that I have in the last 3 weeks talked to someone who's very passionate about the Calabogie Sound, certainly passionate about the Port Royal Sound. Somebody else will tell me about the Telefinny River, and I know more about the Telefinny River now than I ever have known before, and probably more than most people other than Larry Rowland might know about it today. And all of those 6, 7, 8 rivers and 2 sounds have some things in common. That's the area from the May River all the way to the Whale Branch River, includes the Calabogie Sound and the Port Royal Sound. That's different than the rest of the Low Country. I recently had the opportunity last Thursday to attend a presentation by the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources person who's responsible for the formation of the coastal area of South Carolina. Lovely presentation, lots of slides, lots of pictures, lots of information about stuff between Edisto and Georgetown, and the work that was done in Hilton Head that led up to the dredging and renourishment of the beach there, and absolutely nothing between Hilton Head and Edisto. And the reason for that is because they've been busy doing other stuff. Don't fault her. There's an opportunity there for us to look at that. So I'm using the Carolina Bite as a simplistic way to refer to the group so that somebody said, I don't really care about this. Well, the reason we care about this is because of what we have in common. And those things intersect in this institution. What we have in common there is important in a way that we may not have realized before. Here's what I mean. More than the single state that has the most salt marsh acreage in the United States East Coast is South Carolina, our little state. Beaufort County has over 53% of those acres. Add some acreage in Jasper County and you get to 200,000 acres. That seems like a lot, and it is. What we may not know is that 200,000 acres prevents storms and erosion and wave and protects our built environment and our families and our homes and our institutions like this one in ways that would not otherwise be available if it weren't there. That 200,000 acres also sequesters a ton of carbon each year for each acre. That's 4 million pounds of carbon that's not wandering around in the atmosphere contributing to global warming. It's here. And the reason it's here is because we have the unique characteristics of the waters of the Carolina Bight, waters that should be studied, waters that should be researched, waters that have archaeological treasures, cultural treasures, and also environmental treasures. If you look at the characteristics I just described, and you understand that because of our tidal amplitude, we have 8 feet tides twice a day covering 200,000 acres. My friends at the Port Royal Sound Foundation tells me at peak tide, that's 1.2 million gallons per minute moving through the Port Royal Sound. That's a lot of water. But because you do that, and because this water has high salinity, we bathe that area, and we support the growth of salt marsh. That salt marsh then teaches us lessons. And because the water is relatively clean, we're not poisoning it, and we don't have to spend billions of dollars like they did in Chesapeake Bay cleaning it up. We need to study and understand that, but we have risk. Salt marsh is dying in some places. The May River today is less salty than it was not too long ago, and there's a reason for that. And we need scientific rigor, academic rigor, and research associated with students, graduate students, professors, and professional researchers protecting this system. And this system is a place that serves as a nursery for many species that live out in the ocean. My friend Lila Meeks, who I admire and still treat as a mentor, although I periodically joke with her that I've forgotten stuff she's told me, not meaning it, but I probably have, recently told me, not recently, but several years ago, that once she realized that large sea turtles can be seen miles inland here because of high salinity, she fell in love with this place and the waterways here in a way she had not before. But because of that saltiness, you can see large sharks, rays, turtles, and other species that you wouldn't see anywhere else. And our own USCB is the owner of Pritchard's Island. What a great treasure that is, and what great work they've done since they've started there. So this matters because the rest of the globe is trying to manage global warming. I don't think they're leaving there because of me. I think they're going to class. I may be wrong, but that's my interpretation. And so this matters because I saw recently a photo of some folks in Florida that had installed a living shoreline. And they put it in a place where the water was crystal clear and the tide was 18 inches, and they're wondering why it's not growing oysters. Put it in the wrong place, wasted money, not getting the results. If you were in any foreign country in the world, or any portion of the United States, and we said, we'd like to use a natural method to mitigate the impacts of climate change, and we'd like to understand what those tools are, this is the place where we have the laboratory. This is the place that we should have the Center of Excellence. This is the place you should come to learn. And this is the institution that should teach that lesson, not only us, but to the world. And that's a challenge and a vision for us in the future. And if you're not enthused, go sit in on one of the classes taught by some of the professors in marine biology and marine science. You will fall in love with them, and you will fall in love with their students. I challenge you, if you will, to engage your friends that love a river or a body of water and ask them to think about it holistically. Because what happens in these waters stays here. We don't have big freshwater rivers flushing us out. Several years ago, I was at an environmental day for Hilton Head Prep. Great school, I was honored to be there. Had 2 teachers that were giving the information to the group, about 60 people there. They were delightful, young, bright-eyed, very articulate, well-groomed, high energy, the kind of person you'd want teaching your child or grandchild. And one of them said, you know, everything we put in the water in Columbia comes right by here on the way to the ocean. And I sort of fidgeted a little. That first one said it, and then a few minutes later, the second one repeated that. So I raised my hand, and they were polite and nice, as young people often are for people with hair this color, a little bit age. And so I said, well, actually, we don't have a lot of fresh water. The stuff that goes in the river in Columbia goes out through the Ace Basin in the Charleston Harbor, but not here. And a couple weeks later, one of those teachers called me and said, you know, you're right. And when I told my wife, Sharon, who's here, that story, she said, did that amaze you, Dick, that you were right? I said, no, and it doesn't amaze me that you would point that out either, but thank you. And she said, we didn't realize that. So that doesn't mean that she was wrong. That means that she's teaching our best and brightest, and we're not telling her this place she lives in. That's not her fault. That's ours. That's no longer the case, because with the teachers we have in the marine biology program, they can know what's happening. So we're making progress on that. This last thing, and it won't take long, I see Lila looking at her watch. In a few minutes, she's going to do this to me. Get the hook, yeah. Can you put the next slide up? I just want to run through these pretty quick, and it builds a little bit on what Dr. Upshaw says. I'm going to take you to the fourth column from the left, which says combined. That's a combined population of Beaufort County and Jasper County, because the vision implies what's happened over the last 20 years and where we are, and we're celebrating a great success today, but also says what's coming. So if you look at that, it says that in 1960, and I'm not going to tell you where I was, but I was around, that was 56,000 people. 1980, 20-year window, 79. 2000, 141. And now, 228,000. If you look over to the far right, you'll see the percentages. 41% in those 2 decades, 77% in the next 2, and 51% since 2010 and now. Those are big numbers. Those are big numbers on a bigger base. So let's extend those a little bit further. If you assume 50% growth over the next 20 years and 40 years, you're looking at a population base of 513,000 people in 2060, and in 2040, 342,000. That's not a lot of people when you read statistics and you look at a place like New York or Atlanta. But let's compare that to the cities in South Carolina and talk about why we had to have this institution, why this is our institution. It has to have our support. Charleston population, 153,000. Columbia's 139,000. North Charleston, 118,000. And Mount Pleasant's 94,000. Those places have metro areas attached to them, but our metro area we're attached to is on the other side of the Savannah River. That metro area has 404,000 people and grew 57,000 people since 2010. And the reason I mention it to you is because we don't stop employment and we don't stop people coming and growing across that border. When Neil Lipsett and the people of the city and the county and the other people were able to make USCB the #1 nursing school in this area, and with the help and the leadership of the faculty, and provide a great resource, those teachers are teaching nurses that are working in Savannah, and the patients are coming over here to have access to those healthcare professionals that we're growing here locally. We need to have an institution of this size and vision. How big can it be? That's not the question. How big can its impact be? And that can be huge for reasons that are unique to this geographic area. So I just want to mention to you that this unique ecosystem that I described, Carolina Bight, is also part of a unique cultural area. This is the epicenter of the Gullah Geechee Heritage Corridor. This is the place where President Obama said we should study the impact of Reconstruction. This is the place where much of American history, perhaps according to Larry Rowland, virtually all of American history started. And I say that to you because I think what Dr. Panu, Dr. Upshaw, the staff, the faculty, and the students have achieved is remarkable. I'm not convinced it's more than we imagined, but it's pretty close. Now, the question I raise is, what do you want to see here 20 years from now? And the answer to me is a healthy, vibrant economy with healthy, vibrant people with great choices, and not having to listen to mothers and fathers talking about how their children had to leave here to make a career. Have an opportunity for folks to fulfill those voids here. We have great success. What USCB has achieved in cybersecurity is remarkable. There's $1 million grant that's underway that if it's completed and being successful, and who knows what's going to happen in Washington, but if it is, it should lead to $150 million in funding for marine cybersecurity, maritime cybersecurity, and a program unlike any else in the country. Homeland Security and the National Science, Homeland Security and the other security agency whose name I can't recall have established a program that leads to a center of excellence. USCB is on that track and headed in that fashion. When you look at the things that are happening at Pritchard, you look at the things that are happening, that could be happening in archaeology, you look at the people who are coming here, those people are coming here expecting certain things. Many people, and I'm thinking the population of Beaufort and Jasper County, if I'm told correctly, 32% of those people have been here less than 6 years. If that's so, many of those people, your friends and mine, came from places where they had expectations for universities and higher education institutions based on institutions of 100 or 200 years history. And yes, this one was started in 1795 and began classes in 1803, but we're 20 years old as a 4-year institution. So I would just simply tell you that whatever you want to see happen, whatever your personal vision is for this institution, we are very fortunate to have in this institution the leadership, the will, the vision, the place, and the environment for success. There are people that will tell you we have too many universities in this country. We have people tell us we have too many in South Carolina, and that may be true, but they weren't down here. Maybe we have too many others in South Carolina now. That's not the point. This place is different. So as you look ahead, I hope you will do what I have been doing, much to the dismay of my wife, who listens patiently to me and nods as if she's not treating me as if I'm an impatient child. She's treating me as she thinks I'm honing my statements for use somewhere else. I partially plead guilty. But I will tell you that the people that have been talking here today and are going to be talking in the future, and the people that are in these classrooms, both the students and the professors, they're influencing lives in ways that those people that are in those desks often couldn't imagine. What a wonderful thing to be able to say with complete sincerity to someone, your career, your activities, your choices have improved the lives of hundreds and thousands of people who may never remember your name. But we will remember you, and we will thank you for what you've done. And I challenge each of you to help this institution refine that vision and make it come true, because the work has all been done to get there. Jane did the heavy lifting. She had a little help from Wes and some other folks. Good for you. And the leadership that you have here today, much like Jane set the table for, pulls together a team to get things done. There are two old African sayings that I use fairly frequently. One is that the greatest gift that a father can give his children is to love their mother. That's been a simple situation in my case, because Sharon has been easy to love. I'm not saying it's been the same for me, but that's where that goes. The other one is, if you want to go far, go alone. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go as a team. This team is here, and we're celebrating their success, but we also should challenge ourselves to see how much we can help this team be successful in the future. Now, I was going to tell you a lot of great stuff, but I looked at the name on this dais, and I am absolutely comfortable that they got great stuff to tell you about what has happened. And I hope I haven't stolen anybody's comments. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And if you were paying attention to the video earlier, you know that we had spoken about a former member of the USC Board of Trustees, who is also in the room, who I believe also moderated that session that I talked about discussing the higher education future here in Beaufort, and that is Wes Jones. Let's all welcome Wes Jones to speak.
It's a little hard for me to follow that distinguished group, but I will certainly give you the few little words that I can remember from the period of time that I had the opportunity to be on the Board of Trustees of the University of South Carolina, and the things that were happening here. So
I think I'll begin by saying a little over 20 years ago, Jane Upshaw was the Chancellor of USCB. We all know that. She ran everything. There was also other people supporting Jane, including Dick Stewart, Larry Rowland, and myself. This group was working forward USC becoming a 4-year degree-granting institution. At that time, I was representing this area on the USC Board of Trustees in Columbia. In that position, I was able to gain the support of the Board of Trustees in accomplishing this goal of USCB. Again, congratulations to Chancellor Panu for moving this institution forward to become the greatest success that it is in. Thank you very much.
Our next two speakers, their names are etched in my heart. Sometime in 1994, April, it was a momentous day here in Beaufort because there was a horse that went crazy in downtown Beaufort. Some of you may remember that in the news, and that was the same day I was interviewing for a job here. For that job interview, everyone was talking about that horse went crazy, that horse being pulled by the horse carriage. And no one was paying attention much to me. I was being interviewed. Okay. But the day before, I was picked up at the airport by none other than Dr. Larry Rowland. He went to the airport to bring me for my job interview here. And 30 years later, I'm still here. Because I love it here. So Dr. Rowland, whom we will welcome next to the podium, is a distinguished history professor. And let's just say I would not be standing here speaking to all of you if not for Dr. Larry Rowland. Let's all welcome Dr. Rowland.
This is working, isn't it? So I was going to tell a few stories. I may yet. But I wanted to say that there was a lot of alchemy, a lot of conspiratorial activity in the process of getting to a baccalaureate degree. Now, Jane was the master of that. And she had a couple of secret weapons. I'll tell you well, the Hargray building was, of course, Hargray Communications. If you know the story of that company, you know it was begun in a phone booth in Hardyville, South Carolina, and became a large major corporation whose corporate attorney was Wes Jones. That helps, you know. The other thing is that Jane's husband is the CEO of Palmetto Electric. In other words, Jane knew before anybody in this county where all the hookups were going to go, where all the power was going to be, where all the people were going to live. She knew everything because she was married to Tom Upshaw. There was a great article in the Hilton Head magazine several years ago called The Power Couple, literally. And then you wonder how the university got the Hargray building, the 80 acres that surrounded made up the university campus to begin with. And then you wonder how the headquarters of Palmetto Electric was built across the street from the university. mean, there's a lot of this stuff going on. And I'll just give you one trick that Jane pulled on me at every available occasion, because there were a lot of receptions and meetings and things like that. And the Hargrave folks were always invited. And the elder statesman of the Hargrave, there were two families that made up the little phone company that brought communications to Hilton Head Island in 1956 after the bridge was built. This is a great American story. But Mrs. Harvey was elderly, lived in Savannah. I think I went to her house to deliver something that Jane gave me at one time. It was a very it was a house built, what we call that today, mid-century modern, unlike Hilton Head. And it was right off the main road there. And she drove back and forth every year in a baby blue Cadillac. And Mrs. Harvey was a large lady. So whenever we had receptions, she would be seated at a place of honor. And whenever I arrived, Jane would say, go sit with Mrs. Harvey. That was my job, because she loved history. And I happen to know the history of her region and some of the history of her family, and we had a great time, every time. And the consequence was a very large donation and a very large building that's the center of the campus. Not the consequence of my talking to Mrs. Harvey, but the consequence of Jane's genius in putting little things together for big consequences. So this is, oh gosh, I was going to tell you another story. Yeah, the story that was up on the screen a little bit. In the late 80s, my brother and I were investing in property. We bought some property in Georgia from Union Camp Corporation. And I went down to Savannah. We went down at the end of the year to close the deal to take him a check. And Anton Withington was the vice president of, you got to know Anton Withington. He's a great Georgia boy, and a character and very smart guy. Knew the state of Georgia and all this property. And while we were conducting business, there was a map behind him on his desk that had their, 30 or 40,000 acres that they owned in Beaufort, Jasper County. And there, directly diagonally across the map, was a dotted line that said the extension of 278. Now, I looked at that and I said, and we had concluded our business, we were just shooting the breeze, and there was a lot of that. I don't know if he had a bottle of liquor in his drawer or not, but it was kind of typical. But Union Camp owned all of Palmetto Bluff, and my brother and I used to hunt out there with those guys. So I looked at Anton and I said, if you gave 200 acres of that to the University of South Carolina, they might build a campus there. And he just immediately stopped joking. He leaned over the table and he said, that's the kind of idea that our board of directors would be very interested in. What I did not know, and he did, is that they'd already made the deal with Sun City. And so this was in Arizona, where they built the first Sun City. University of Arizona built a campus right next to their development. And it helped sell their property. Doesn't help, it sells their property. So all of these things were going on in the 90s and the late 90s. And I didn't really know what it all meant, but Jane did. She knew what it all meant because she was living with the guy who ran the power company. And he had to know what was going on. Nothing could happen without him. And nothing could happen without Hargrave Communications. And you should look at the story of those two companies. It is the history of the region, of the numbers that Dick Stewart just told you. Beaufort County, from the time that, from the census of 1960 until 2000, that's 40 years, Beaufort County remained in the top 10 fastest growing counties in the American Southeast. And those are the numbers that made the University of South Carolina necessary. Jane is the person that made it happen. It was masterful. It was magical because she made me sit next to Mrs. Harvey. That was it.
Thank you very much. So, I did mention two names earlier. The search committee that was looking to hire me at that time was chaired by Dr. Larry Rowland, and he recommended me to be hired to none other than the first provost or academic dean at that time of USCB, and that would be Lila Meeks. Let's all welcome Lila Meeks.
Well, I'm glad I got to come after Larry because he didn't have any visuals either. And I hope you don't mind that there's going to be a little repetition here. But you should feel good about that because we're all talking about the same thing. And if it was a completely different story, then I think it would call into question just who's telling it straight. But Jane and I lived through the same period and we had the same experiences. So this morning at 6 o'clock or something like that, I thought, you know, my brain is going, it's disappearing every day. And it's probably not a safe thing for me to get up at a podium without having written down what I'm going to say. So I wrote these notes down, and I'm pleased to tell you that as people have talked, I thought, yes, that agrees with what I said. Yes, that sounds familiar. So with that in mind, I hope I can have your indulgence for another few minutes. Let me begin by apologizing to all the people I consider so important to USCB's becoming the most recent 4-year state university, some 20 years ago, whose names I no longer can remember. With that in mind, and with apologies to our resident historian for leaving out all names and all dates, I shall briefly recall their contributions without naming them or telling you exactly when they did what they did. 25 years ago, Beaufort College was USCB's avocado, green shag carpeted admissions office, and the state allowed it to offer 2-year associate degrees. Fortunately for this region, the shag was about to be pulled up and 4-year degrees were about to be offered. With state funding for higher education stretched, no one, and I repeat, no one, outside of Beaufort and the surrounding counties was interested in our becoming a 4-year institution, because that would mean cutting the pie into even smaller pieces. And nobody wants a smaller piece of pie, right? I suggest that there are 3 primary reasons we were able to pull this off. And you've heard many more interesting ones than what I'm going to say. But I still think this is essentially true. The first one is the beauty of where we live. The second one is the fact that we were not, as first envisioned by the founding fathers of Beaufort, a standalone institution. We were part of the university system. And number 3 was that a recently arrived new member of our community and a county administrator, whom Dr. Upshaw has already named, was sitting across the table one day when there were 5 of us trying to figure out how we're going to make this happen. And they came up with the idea of a local source for the necessary money to create another 4-year institution. If it was local, it wasn't coming from these other places. In spite of its many limitations, USCB attracted quality faculty and university and community leadership, all of whom, just like Jean Ribaud some 400 years earlier, found this region irresistible. Because a few of the departments at the university 4-year campuses in Columbia and Aiken were supportive, as a USC campus, we were able to begin offering their 4-year degrees. They got tuition and they got the body count taught by our faculty on our campus. And as Jane has pointed out, we had wonderful faculty. They took the job because their wives looked around or their husbands looked around and said, "Oh, I like to fish. Look at that golf course. Well, look, oh, isn't this a pretty place? Wouldn't this be a great place to rear our children?" And so the next thing you knew, they took the job even though it didn't offer them the kind of academic opportunities in courses that a bigger university would have. Once we had faculty and students in place for degrees in Columbia's interdisciplinary studies and Aiken's business management and early childhood education degrees, we were on our way. Their administrations were amazed at the quality of our faculty. I would submit people to be approved to teach, and I'd get a phone call saying, "Where are you getting these people?" I said, "Well, John Day lives right around the corner over here," because he had been the dean of the College of Business Management at Purdue University. And he ended up teaching the 2 capstone courses in the business degree. They also were surprised when we had the interdisciplinary studies at some of our liberal arts humanities faculty, because there was a group that met here and had a big reception over at Title Home back before it was redone, and they were the Milton Scholars of the Universe, because teaching English for us was, and they vote on this actually, the Milton Scholar of the Year, who was teaching English at USC Beaufort. Another point that was made very clearly by Dick Stewart was that we had a professor who actually got an island donated to the university so that we could do biological research out at Pritchard's. And he started what now looks like that's not going to have any end at all. It's going to keep growing and developing. With the enrollments growing in the 4-year programs, the need for a baccalaureate campus was evident. And our faculty, I thought, now this is the only thing I thought maybe I got wrong, but my memory's not good, but it's a good story anyway. Here's my pin that we were all wearing around, and I'm sorry it's too small for you to really see, but as I recall, it was the faculty members that came up with the idea, and not Chris Plyler, but don't tell Chris I said that. That might be, I might have it wrong. At any rate, working together, they produced the pen, but the idea for that was from I thought it was in a faculty meeting. I might be wrong about that, but nevertheless, It was a great idea, and the pen worked beautifully. The What's Missing pen helped to make our political case. I then went on the road to meet with commission members of CHE. Those people represent each district around the state, and they're the ones who had to give the first approval for us to be 4 years. And talking individually to them and making the case and showing them the pen and so forth, was a labor of love. And it was the most interesting one I had was when I was up in the attic of one of the lady members of CHE, and I was busy earnestly telling her about my students that couldn't leave the area and needed to earn 4-year degrees. And she was hanging from a rafter in some kind of a harness saying it was something to do with she had a back problem. But anyway, she spoke up for us. I decided that if I could have spoken to every one of them while they were upside down, I probably would have been extraordinarily successful, because when it came to the CHE meeting, she was our most forceful supporter after being in the attic with her. Let me see where I am there. And then we had students, as you talked about, who went up there and they spoke eloquently about how much this need existed and how appreciative they were and how great the need was. And then we had a new dean, a brand new dean, who then became our first chancellor, and a new member of the Board of Trustees of USC from Hilton Head. And they harnessed support from south of the Broad. And those of us who live here, you know how hard it is to get into those people down there to figure out what's going on up here. So that was a big move. And you certainly are right that Tom Opshaw played his part too, I'm sure. And then, so we had the campus down there and the campus here. And then we ended up with students living on campus. As Jane pointed out, she got busy and got us some dormitories down there, and then Dick put some dormitories up here. And so once we had the funds raised by the TIF district, the state found what was missing and allowed us to offer 4-year degrees once we had SAC's permission. Dr. Upshaw and the architects moved forward with the Hargrave building. USCB faculty leaped forward, developing degree programs, including a sociologist who was very creative and hardworking with us. We came up with a brand new degree in human services, which is still being offered today, as I understand it. And our student body grew locally, and with the new dormitories in Beaufort and in Bluffton, it just grew. I may have described in this my allotted 7 minutes, but I can assure you that USCB's achieving baccalaureate status was no easy feat. Like many low-country legends, it's rather a miracle that we are here celebrating 20 years and 3,813 baccalaureate degrees later. To all those who sloughed away to get us here, those present and those gone, we say thank you and hallelujah.
Our next and last presenter is an alumni of USCB and who's also been working for us for several years. Many of our faculty and staff are so dependent on Abby Vaughn. So let's welcome our speaker, Abby Vaughn.
Well, thank you all for having me. And what you'll hear from me is maybe a little bit different, and it's more of a thank you and a commentary back of what all of your efforts did for me and for other alumni. My history with USCB actually began to intersect around this pivotal moment in 2004 when my family moved to the area from Pennsylvania. And I remember driving down Carteret Street for the first time, and we were headed to our new home over on Ladies Island. I saw this beautiful campus nestled in the heart of downtown. I saw the character of the buildings spread out in the life of the town, and I knew that I wanted to find out more. During my senior year of high school, I actually worked in the bookstore, which many of you may remember was down here on Carteret Street. I began learning about USCB and was so excited to discover that it was a four-year institution right here near my family. Family is important to me, and being able to further my education here was so important to my overall well-being. It meant staying connected to that family and also being able to afford college. But then something funny happened. Suddenly my family wasn't just living across the bridge on Ladies Island. This university community of faculty, staff, and fellow alumni, they became my family too. In some cases, I mean that to the fullest extent because I met and married my husband here. But it's also Dr. Upshaw who called me into her office one day to ask me if that education graduate, Justin Vaughn, and I were an item yet. It's Dr. Panu who has paused in his busy day to give me parenting advice, our former controller who was ready with hot meals and hospital visits during the birth of both of my daughters. Each year as this campus grows, my family grows. And the same is true for my husband. He wasn't able to be with us here today, but he's the assistant principal of an elementary school here in Beaufort County and graduated from USCB. He was born and raised in Walterboro, South Carolina, and always knew that he wanted to be an educator. So when he started looking for a four-year institution close to home, he found USCB ready to welcome him. And I honestly don't know if either of us would be the people that we are today without USCB. Now that we're both professionals here in the county, we have an even deeper appreciation for the impact of USCB's presence and growth in the community at large. My husband works with more than 10 other USCB graduates at his school alone who are at this very minute working hard educating Beaufort County's children. And each year that passes, we watch the alumni of not just the education department, but all the disciplines begin to spread out across the Lowcountry with exponential impact. I've spent my entire career here on our three campuses. After graduating in 2010, I accepted a position in the finance office and went on to spend the next 14 years working alongside people like Earl Hawley and Joe Parrott to make Dr. Upshaw and Dr. Panu's dreams for this baccalaureate institution come to life. I had the honor and privilege of meeting with vendors, walking the unbroken grounds of our dining facility, 6 of our housing buildings, the recreation center, the Hilton Head campus, and even our partnered housing here in Beaufort. I've worked and watched through the years as contractors have raised our campuses to new levels with each brick and board, while our hardworking faculty and staff are also lifting us up with their dedication and innovation. It is so incredible to see the changes that have happened here since my first drive down Carteret Street. As my husband and I can attest to, the Lowcountry is home to so many young people who are ready to spread their wings and reach their next educational milestone. And especially in today's economy, it's so important to have that offered here in our region. Thanks to the hard work of our USCB family, though, it's more than just a four-year degree that we're able to offer. Thanks to the Beaufort Jasper Higher Education Commission, students who aren't able to live locally with family can study with a roof over their heads. With the opening of our dining facility, students have a warm meal before their next exam. Each building, each program, and each year has built up an infrastructure around our four-year degrees that turn this place into a thriving institution that is a safe place to land for students as they become who they're meant to be. I look forward to seeing all the future growth, and thank you for the opportunity to be here.
We now have a panel discussion, and we will welcome our speakers to come up on stage so that they will be able to then respond to the questions from the audience. We will also have a microphone that will be passed around so that the people, because we are recording this, this presentation, so we'll pass the microphone so that the questions will also be heard in the video that's being made.
Two microphones.
There's two
Yeah.
microphones.
So you're going to have to share. This will be good. All right. I do have one question already that was texted to me, but if you have a question from the audience, please just raise your hand. I'll bring the microphone to you. One of the first questions we had, and anyone can answer this, is where did the military play a role at the very beginning? Where were they in the conversation of a value of a baccalaureate institution?
Sounds like a question for me. Is this working?
It is. It's on.
Well, before Hilton Head, there was the United States Marine Corps. The beginning of modern Beaufort began with the Marine Corps buildup in World War II. And Beaufort was saved during the Depression by Parris Island, founded in 1915. I'll just give you one statistic. In 1940, the population of Beaufort County was 24,000 people. During World War II, 241,000 Marines went through Parris Island. That was the beginning of modern Beaufort. And so in the 50s, this campus began in 1959. I mean, most of the business in Beaufort depended on the Marine Corps, still does, really. And this, as a business, depended on the Marines. So that was a large reason for starting the campus in the first place and sustaining it. And we developed in the 70s an on-base program, which many of the faculty who are sitting here, we all taught out there at one time or another. And we all probably had the same experience that I did, that the best students I had in the 30 years that I taught were all either dependents or United States Marines. So it's just a fabulous addition. And it was a huge calculation in everything that we did through the 70s and 80s and 90s. Jane would have to tell you how much of a calculation it was in becoming a baccalaureate institution. There's great demand among the Marines for more and more educational opportunities. So we responded to that for sure. It was our biggest business.
You know, to the classroom, to the discussion. And early on, in the beginning of our being baccalaureate, we actually taught at Parris Island and on the Marine Corps Air Station. That changed when technology became an integral part of delivering education. And when we asked the Marine Corps if we could have internet connectivity and the ability to use technology as a part of the learning experience, they said no. And SACS requires that we have the same delivery in every location. And so we had to move the military enrollees to become a part of primarily this institution. So they were critical, so critical that we were actually teaching home base in both bases.
And it was the Marine Corps that decided that they wouldn't let us have the internet connectivity for those classrooms. And our accrediting body is unrelenting about having the same resources.
I'd just like to add too a circuitous route, but fortunate timing. When we had this forum here, the commanding officers of the Air Station, Parris Island, and the Naval Hospital were on the panel. And they were asked if we needed a four-year university. And they all said in a different form, yes, the active duty personnel and their families need it. If we're going to fulfill their mission as bases, which resonated with a lot of folks, and their members are going to fulfill their objectives as individuals, they needed access to a local four-year university. The part about fulfilling the mission was particularly important because a few years prior to that, there had been a BRAC, Base Realignment and Closure Program. And Beaufort and the area around it was very nervous that we might lose the air station, or Parris Island, which would have been a significant blow to the economy. And so when the 350 people assembled in this room heard those three officers describe that situation, they sort of leaned forward because this became an economic issue directly related to their well-being and the tax base of this county. And I'm convinced it had a lot to do with obtaining the votes from the county and the other supporters to have that TIF district and the funding that got this started. They were critical.
Okay, so don't be shy. Who has a question?
Thank you, Andrea. And thank you very much for emphasizing, first of all, that USCB evolved as a liberal arts institution, and it evolved in such a way that it benefited from its military faculty. I think that there was, at least for a decade or so, it was important that full-time faculty would teach on base. And if you didn't, so once every so many years, you have to give a course or two out there. But it was always a pleasure to do so, because as Larry says, those were the most serious students we had. They came from elsewhere. They came with degrees that, from high school degrees that emphasized the importance of the liberal arts, enough so that we didn't have as much of a difficulty with it. We didn't have any difficulty with them. They knew that they had to perform, or else they wouldn't get reimbursed as fully. And so there was an incentive there. But it's very good to hear that the balance of USCB's educational programs is still healthy. And it's particularly good when we think of the types of needs that are going to be necessary in the next decade and 2 decades, particularly the ages of global warming and the changes that have come about and that will come about, which do need a humanities orientation just as much as a science orientation. So we don't want to become simply a science institution. We don't want to simply become a humanities institution. We want to integrate those. And I've said enough. Thank you.
I'd like to point out that that's Gordon Haste. He's been here almost as long as I have. And he ended his career when Jane asked him to be the associate dean. What was it called, Gordon? Vice chancellor. Vice chancellor of academic affairs. And I have to tell the story on Al Panu, because Gordon was still there, and we went to a meeting where Al presented his plans for the future of USC Beaufort. I don't know if you remember this, Al. But we were at a table. Gordon and I were sitting across from each other, and we had both been academic deans. And Al said, well, we're going to have master's degrees and baccalaureates in this, and we're going to join the NCAA Division II. And Gordon and I looked at each other with this knowing look, that people in the same is. And we both kind of rolled our eyes at the same time. And guess what? Al Panu has done all those things that we were rolling our eyes for. So it was, it's been a remarkable success. And thank you, Gordon, for all of your work.
Amen. Of
course, Tom, you've got to be in the back corner, 3-4 rows over. It's a
Well, that was awkward. Sorry about that. Dr. Upshaw, you indicated how important student housing is to the overall educational experience. And I was wondering if you could, somebody could address the, what the housing did for the Beaufort campus, and if there are any thoughts for student housing for the Hilton Head campus.
I can tell you what housing has done for the Beaufort campus. It's added campus life to the campus. I mean, when I was chancellor, we added the Grace White House and had 14 residential students. Look, I know that sounds like a joke in today's numbers, but the truth is you have to start somewhere. And that's what we were doing. What Dick and Chancellor Panu have done is add to that number so that housing is an integral component. As far as Hilton Head, you'll have to ask Dr. Panu about that. That's his job, not mine.
I'd like to weigh in on that if you don't mind, Dr. Panu. Can I do that? And thank you, Tom. Tom Hens is a friend of mine, and he's the fellow that asked this question. And Tom is involved with workforce and affordable housing and is a resident of Hilton Head, so making the trip is something we're grateful for. And Tom knows that if you don't have places for faculty and staff to live, it's going to be difficult to keep them here and attract them. And so we're all working towards that. I serve at the pleasure of the Chancellor and others on the board of the Education Foundation. And the Education Foundation has undertaken this year as a mission to support USCB's objectives for each of the campuses. I'm pleased to say that in Hilton Head, the Education Foundation's been investing money in designing plans and working with the town. And the town has been remarkably supportive. Several years ago, about 4 or 5 years after the Hilton Head building was built, I spoke with the then town manager of Hilton Head, and he said, I don't think we can deal with housing over here. The public environment is just not supportable. That is 180 degrees different now. They are very supportive. We hope to bring forward a plan that will require funding and community support, as these other plans have, that would put 92 residential units on the campus to be owned by USCB. There's a private developer that's worked on a separate program that would produce another 50 to 60 units. I'm talking with him again next week to see what the status of that is. So, Tom, we don't have any concrete plans, but subject to the Education Foundation bringing it to Dr. Panu and the people at USCB and them supporting it, we will certainly need the support of the community and the Chamber of Commerce that you're affiliated with in Hilton Head to help make this a reality. And thank you for your interest.
I want to add one more thing to that. It was always the vision for that campus to have residential housing, because what we've lived as an institution to know, those of us who've been affiliated in one way or another with USCB for 40 years, is that without housing, without the residential component, you're never going to have the educational product and mission and completion of the vision happen. It's critical to have it. So, great job, Dick, and great job, Tom.
Fantastic. Okay, we're going to get really creative here. And we are going to work together, just as this panel did, to pass the microphone back. Are we ready, Gordon?
Thank you for giving me an opportunity. I have never met anybody on the panel. I have no connection with anybody on the panel. But I'm just curious. A real short story. In 1974, I came from the University of Buffalo, enrolled in graduate school at the University of South Carolina, Columbia. I had a great experience at the Columbia campus. After I left Carolina, I went back to New York, taught at a community college, and then came back to the University of South Carolina, Columbia, as an administrator in the system. And that was 1994, 20 years after being a graduate student. And I looked at the campus. I said, wow, beautiful campus. The horseshoe was still there. Williams-Brice Stadium was expanding. Absolutely gorgeous campus. But then I saw all the growth that occurred on that campus. While I was at the University of South Carolina as an administrator, I had the opportunity to tell my staff, let's have a meeting at USC Beaufort, the two-year campus. I had never been there. I had a 4-year tenure at the Columbia campus. So we met here, and I said, what a beautiful, charming campus. We had a tour of the historic area. Making a long story short, I then left the University of South Carolina, went to University of Tennessee, and ended my career there, almost 20 years at UT. When it was time to retire, I said to my wife, I'd like to check out Beaufort again. You know, so we came back to Beaufort. I said, wow, this is beautiful. But the campus didn't look any different at all. And I'd heard about the wonderful campus in Bluffton, and then as a resident heard about what had happened in Hilton Head, and I commend you for all that. My question is, what's happening to this campus in terms of what's the plan for the physical plan, aside from the apartments that have been built, which frankly, and I hope no one takes umbrage, is apartment living and residential living on campus are quite two different phenomena, as you probably know, Dr. I'm sure. But I haven't seen, even the maintenance. I look at this facility, it's beautiful, but I look at the grounds here and I don't see a whole lot of change. And as a Beaufort resident of 10 years now, I begin to wonder, what is the plan for the university? I don't see, frankly, the money being invested. I hear about the enrollment growth, which is very slow. The trajectory is kind of flat, a little bump up. That's great. But I guess I have not heard anything about the town and gown relationship here. This is the first time I've ever seen, with all due respect, the chancellor here in Beaufort. I'm sure you've been here before, but I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen any town and gown. As I said, I hope you don't consider these harsh comments, but as somebody in Beaufort, I'm just wondering, because I think having a university is a wonderful thing for an institution. I mean, for a city and a town. We don't talk enough about this university and all the wonderful things being done. I'm just afraid that the heads are being turned to south of the Broad.
May I respond
Thank you for an opportunity.
May I respond to that? Thank you, and thank you for your concern. And congratulations for coming from two state flagship universities that receive virtually unlimited funding and do not send a penny to us. Let me repeat that. Let me finish. And as a result of that, we locally here are funding and developing a community university that fits into this program. And I say that because during the period of time that this organization has been building, this university, the growth that's been occurring has been where there's been opportunities. The plan for this campus is being developed, and we had a forum here about 9 days ago now, and that forum led to some discussions about what we're going to be. How that's going to shape up and how we're going to finance that will probably be fleshed out over the next 4 to 6 months, would be my guess. This is the Education Foundation doing it, and that's subject to approval from the university and other parties before anything can move forward. But key to that is community support for just what you've described. Dr. Upshaw did some very heavy lifting, and she gives credit to her team, but as a friend of mine and mentor in business said, the speed of the team is the speed of the leader. And so she did those great things. However, here's what we've got. What should the enrollment for USCB be? What should we want it to be? Now, I'm an independent, so I can give you my opinion. That doesn't mean that I have to be limited in my opinion by somebody else's. But I see 7,500 students in Bluffton and about 2,500 in Hilton Head and about 2,500 here. That activity is going to require facilities of any number of sorts. It depends on the programs you want to emphasize and where you want to put those programs. I think the future is very bright for USCB on all 3 campuses. Appreciate your impatience to see more stuff up here. We're going to need that when the time comes for public support. So thank you for that.
I want to add something before Chancellor Panu chimes in. Dick Stewart was very complimentary of me, but there are people in Beaufort that would have ridden me out on a rail had they had the opportunity. When I presented the plan in this building to them to have 200 residential students in a building built right out here where the faculty house is and the marine science building. So you have to have a vision that people embrace. And clearly, 200 students was something that some people in Beaufort did not embrace. I agree with Dick. Choosing the right programs in the right location is key to how this institution needs to grow in the future. But I'm telling you, without the local support, it will not happen. So you need to ask your neighbors and your friends to come support USCB in its vision for the future.
I'm not part of the panel discussion, but I thought it was appropriate to perhaps put some perspective to your questions and comments. The growth of a campus or an institution is measured with multiple dimensions, as you know. There's the programmatic growth in terms of academic offering. We've gone from one academic offering here in the studio art to now 6, including one of our fastest growing program in marine biology. So that in and of itself would be potentially an indication of the specific things with regard to how this particular campus is growing. There's been allusion to housing that has also tremendously made a difference in the growth that you will see here. This facility that we are in here is different from what it was, in part because of some of the investment and renovation that has gone in here. And hopefully one of the most awaited and appreciated is going to be the change with the bathrooms. That's going to be here. The elementary school bathrooms will no longer be very soon. And we're having one of our largest investment in terms of resources in the renovation of the sandstone building. And it is going to be underway, very transformative, as you'll see. We have had acquisition of 2 other facilities in terms of building that have come online. So it may not be visible in some of the ways that perhaps the visibility is, but please know that there is a great deal of activity here and more to come. Thanks.
Thank you very much, everyone. I am sure you still all have those burning questions to ask our panel, but we will transfer those questions at the reception where you can approach them and have discussions with them. So we would now like to welcome Andrea Cicino to give the closing remarks for our event.
Thanks for that. I've been here 14 years. I'm known as the Ollie lady, but I'd like people to prefer to say USCB lady. And when Dr. Panu asked me to chair this initiative for the 20th anniversary, at first I looked at it as another check the box. But little did I know. So a mentor of mine at one point shared that it's wise to understand the past, and that this knowledge will allow you to appreciate the present in a much deeper context. And it's this knowledge that lights your path forward in ways that you hadn't seen before. So These initiatives have been just so important to our past and our present and our future. Another mentor of mine, who's sitting on the end of the table, shared early on that many leaders can have a vision. But what is a vision if it is not shared and connected to deeply by others in the community that see value? Now, I refer to this principle as the bus principle. What good is driving a bus toward a goal if it is empty of passengers? If you think about that. And I think we all know leaders that they get to a goal, they drive the bus, but there's no one there to celebrate, endorse, and most importantly, be a part of it. The vision and tireless work that was needed to make USCB a 4-year baccalaureate institution took a successful leader and more leaders to share that vision, support it, and create a bus that gained commitment and enthusiastic passengers all along the way. You all certainly did that, and then some, and you can see the fruition of your work. So on behalf of students yesterday, students today, and this is what really blows your mind, right? Students of the future. Thank you for your vision, your steadfast work, your efforts, your headaches, all of it. Thank you. And if we could give them a round of applause, and again to you. So before we take a break and go out to the reception or to the lobby where there's some food and drink for you to enjoy, let me just remind you on the back of your program, we are doing 3 panels during the 20th anniversary year, and then we'll do a bookend event. But on January 9th, we have another panel on the Bluffton campus, on March 27th on the Hilton Head campus, and each panel is looking at USCB from a very distinct lens, again looking at the past, the present, and the future. What is USCB's vision and relevance to that particular topic, whether it's education or ecology? So please put those on your calendar. We'd love to see you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for helping us celebrate 20 years. It's a big deal, right? And please come out and enjoy some food and drink with us. Thank you.